Hi, everybody. All right, so I already had some amazing safety questions brought to me today. And this is super important because everything is not clear. There's lots of things that could happen during our school day where there isn't like the CDC published a paper on it, right? So it's really important that we keep asking questions and we keep thinking these things through together. So here are the safety questions for today. There are three. The first is, during distance learning, what can we do about mask wearing in the classroom? This is a great question because we have to think about the layers of safety, and that's going to be different in different classrooms. So we have to think about, okay, what can we put in place to make it safe not to wear our mask for a certain duration of time? I'm not saying all day, I'm saying for the half an hour circle, right? So what else can we put in place? So are you over 6 feet from each other? Is there good ventilation in the space? Are you facing different directions? This is actually a great thing to think about because if your air particles are facing towards a wall and your work partner's air particles are facing a totally other direction, it's highly unlikely those air particles are going to meet, right? So if you two are facing different directions, that might be a great way to not share those air particles. Can a person be outside? Can we use our outside space for people to be able to be mask free and safe in another location in the building? Can you wear a face shield? A face shield isn't a replacement for a mask, but it is a layer of safety that we can put in place where kids can still understand what you're saying. So keep thinking about what it is in your space that you can do to make the distance learning and the lack of mask wearing during that time make it safe for you and your colleagues, which will be different in different spaces because there's different limitations of different spaces. All right. Second question, what is a stable cohort? This is something that has been actually really challenging for some people to understand. And I'm hoping I can give a good story that will help people understand it. So a stable cohort group is really just a group of adults and children that interact regularly with each other and can pose a risk of exposure to each other, right? Because you're seeing them every day. So actually right now, Karen, who is somebody I see every day in the office, she is in my stable cohort group because I see her all the time. And our safety relies on each other, right? So, but when we think about stable cohort groups, the CDC, other health guidance bodies, they are thinking about groups of children. And so if student A goes to school, right, and plays with kids from his classroom inside, and then he goes to play with 3 other classrooms outside, and then he sits in the cafeteria with kids from 4 other classrooms, right, and then is diagnosed with COVID and went all day interfacing with all those people, we have to close down 8 classrooms because that is how many kids he could have possibly spent 15 minutes or more with, licked, like gotten his germs, exchanged germs with kids. And so we have to be like, okay, all of these kids that interface with each other are at risk, right? So, but if a student goes to school and then only plays with this class, only eats with this class, only goes to the bathroom with this class, and then gets sick, we only close down 1 class, right? And only 1 class is exposed. And that's why cohorting is important because it prevents a tremendous amount of spread from happening in a school, right? And the CDC recommends cohorting as an important strategy, especially when you have little people who have trouble with social distancing. So they're saying, hey, if you know that your little people can't social distance because everybody's aware that small people can't, then cohorting is kind of the next best way of getting kids as safe as possible, that we're only exposing our cohort to each other. And then we use all these other layers of safety to keep that cohort safe. Children cannot cross cohorts, not for any reason unless there's an emergency. Obviously, if we're evacuating for a fire, we're going to have children crossing a cohort, right? Like if there's an earthquake, if there's something that happens where we have to leave the building quickly, there's going to be cohort crossing, right? But it's also going to be incredibly dangerous to stay in the building, or it's incredibly dangerous to keep people from crossing the cohort, right? So I just want people to think about cohort crossing shouldn't happen for children under any circumstances unless we're really dealing with a safety issue of some kind. All right. Third question of the day. What if I have to go near another cohort, like passing in the hall or passing by the playground? This is a great question because it brings us back to the layers of safety, right? So how many are in place when you're because let's say you have to go to the bathroom while kids are, you're a portable, you have to take your kids to the bathroom, but there's kids outside playing in the yard. Okay, what do we do? This is a great question. All right, first of all, think about distance, right? So check your distance. So if you're taking your kids to the bathroom, you want to make sure that they're staying as far away from the children on the playground as they can. And remember, if you're more than 6 feet, you're probably fine, right? So, but just think about, how do I make it so my kids are just not as close to the other children as much as possible, right? 2, are you outside? Outside is the safest place to be. It's the best ventilated area, and people have said the spread of COVID-19 is significantly reduced when you are outside. So if you're traveling outside, you've already placed in a layer of safety. 3 is the interaction between the two cohorts. I'm going to say interaction in quotes because nobody should be talking to each other. Nobody should be playing. You're just passing by in the space, right? So is that shorter than 15 minutes? It should be. Unless something happens, something goes wrong, you should just be walking past that other group, which means there's no significant exposure likely. Remember, the CDC says you have to be exposed in a space for 15 minutes before a COVID exposure is likely, right? So if you're just crossing paths, it is highly unlikely in those situations that there's going to be an exposure event, right? So I think the last slide I just wanted to say, if we can click it, there we go, is think about then, okay, I'm nervous about this. Are there other layers of safety that I can put in place? I can practice mask wearing in the hallway or in transition. So I can say, okay, every day when we go to the bathroom, we're practicing our mask wearing at the same time, right? That's another layer of safety. Can you plan your walk? Can you plan your transition around other people's transitions? So, hey, I need to use the bathroom. I'm out in the portables. When is the time when people are unlikely to be out in the yard? I'm going to look at my recess schedule and try to figure that out, right? And then also make sure you're hand washing or using sanitizer at your destination. So you've passed by the cohort quickly, efficiently, and then you've gotten to your destination and you're hand washing, putting in another layer of safety, right? So this is a great example of all the ways that we can problem solve these events by just thinking about, okay, what are the layers of safety that I have in place? And we can make great decisions for ourselves and our kids. Thanks for listening.